of different brands, and so packaged food brands and also food service operators, to a test kitchen where we just got them hands-on with our chefs to learn about everything that you can do with all processed raspberry formats. This was a day-and-a-half event where we just immersed them in processed raspberries, get them hands-on in the kitchen, and have them innovate in real time with the intention that they will take some of this inspiration and the ideas and program or product concepts that they develop back to their place of work, and develop some products for the future that include processed raspberries. You can see here they just had a ball. They were all just so in love with the products that y'all grow and process, and came up with so many amazing uses of all the different formats. It was really exciting to see the level of innovation and creativity that was happening with processed raspberries here. And as an outgrowth of this event, we actually had a really interesting opportunity with the Spartanburg School District in South Carolina, where Chef Rebecca Polson, who oversees all of the food service for this school district, built an entire menu for Spartanburg's Health and Wellness Council around processed raspberries. And so she developed a whole menu for 50 plus people who work on their Health and Wellness Council and oversee all of the food service decision making and food nutrition education for the students in their school district. And she integrated processed raspberries into like 10 different menu items. It was amazing. And we also last month had an opportunity to sponsor a conference for an organization called Les Dames d'Escoffier. It's a very exclusive women's food and culinary professional association. They had their annual conference in Seattle this year. You can see here we had some wonderful infield family presence there, and the guests, the attendees at this conference represent food ingredient decision makers across the full spectrum of the food industry. And so we were able to expose them and talk to them about the processed raspberry industry. We integrated raspberries into their menus, and it was just all around a really great showing for us. And then we're also just on the heels of another conference, the International Food Service Editorial Council. This is a boutique, very small conference for all of the trade magazines that reach the food service industry. So during this conference, we had an opportunity to showcase processed raspberries in a few different menu items, and then also meet one-on-one with editors and writers for these trade magazines that you see here, to talk with them about opportunities for inclusion of processed raspberries in their content, in their editorial content over the next 12 months. So we expect to see some really great trade media coverage coming out with food service over the next 12 months. And then finally, the last conference that we've had for this program this year is the Culinary Institute of America's Healthy Kids Collaborative. And this is taking place right now this week at the CIA's campus in Napa Valley. This is a really unique conference that's focused on school food service and school nutrition, and bringing really high quality ingredients and innovation to school food service menus. So red raspberries are right down there right now, and we've got our product formats included in tastings and recipes and menus throughout the entire conference. So we expect that this is going to provide some really great leads on the school food service segment that can be followed up on throughout the next year. Back to you.
So say it's a quick run through of what's been accomplished not only over the years but this last year, and I think it really shows how we've grown the program to wind up where we are today. That leads us to the opportunities ahead. What we wanted to show here was down the left is the 4 areas that Allison focused on in her presentation and have been the focus of our program over the last number of years. And I want to look really at the last 2 columns, because what those identify is where the opportunities are for the future and what can come from it. And really it starts, everything's been based, and it's always started with research as the foundation for our program. We knew from the very beginning when the council launched, we funded pretty much every research proposal that we had, because we knew that was the fuel for the pipeline. Since that time, we've been more selective. We've identified where raspberries have a competitive advantage as far as human health goes, and we've narrowed down the types of projects that are funded and the number of them, where we're now looking only at human studies and clinical studies, because those are the gold standard that FDA will look at if you try to move forward with a qualified health claim. And the first thing we note there is the development of a standardized powder and placebo for research. When you get to the point we're at right now, FDA wants to see that the same product was used at a number of different places with the same kind of results that validate the conclusions that you make. And we did a very quick evaluation on where we are as far as being able to pursue a qualified health claim. And when an industry has that, the impact is immeasurable. Working with one of our researchers on a scale of 1 to 10, she said we're at a 5 right now. We're halfway there to being able to do what the intention was, and to get that claim. And so looking at for the future, the industry is poised to begin that relationship and discussion with FDA on how to pursue a qualified health claim. In trade marketing, Allison talked about some of the conferences that we've attended over the last number of years, and they're very focused and very limited. We don't do them all. We do the ones where we can have the most impact, because they tend to be smaller, where we can have one-on-one engagements and conversations, when we can really have a chance to tell people more about raspberries and what they can do. Over the last 2 years, we've started working on the school market. She talked about 2 of those opportunities, both with NACUFs and the Healthy Kids Collaborative, and the impact right away in 1 year was the luncheon at the Spartanburg School District. So there's more of that that's more of that for the future. Consumer marketing, as you build that social media community, and the more discussion that goes on, I always liken it to throwing a pebble out into a pond, and the ripples that are created. There's not only the ripples that we've created, but each of these influencers, each of these ambassadors are throwing their own pebbles out into that pond, and it's where those ripples intersect and ripples become waves. From that, we've used it to promote the human studies. It just builds those ripples and builds even more waves. There's more opportunities for that in the future. And those human health studies with the health professionals, whether it's HEB, which is the retail chain we've partnered with this year, to getting that information out. And I don't know that Allison mentioned it. One of the things that's unique about what HEB does is their group of registered dietitians. There's 14 of them corporate wide. They're not only doing in-store demonstrations and education for their consumers, they're also going out into the community. They're meeting with doctors and nurse practitioners and giving them information to help improve the health and wellness of the local communities. That's a wonderful way. When they're educated, we participated in as they began their program, we participated in a one-day webinar with them to teach those RDNs, the registered dietitian nutritionists, about frozen raspberries. They take that message out. It's incorporated in their message when they go to the community and the healthcare community. So it's a wonderful way of getting into that market, doing things differently. And that's one of the things that our program has always looked at, is how can we do the same thing different? How can we pull that arrow out of the quiver that everybody else does, but apply it in a different way that's going to be memorable and leaves an impact. And we've done that through building relationships to carry those messages out. So I wanted to be brief because I know Henry wants to get his panel up here, and there'll be questions about, maybe some of the questions about what we've done or where we go in the future, questions about the council itself, but or how it's closing up. But in leaving, I'd like to thank the industry for the support you've given to me and to the marketing team over the last number of years. It has been a joyful and magical journey, and it's not over. It's just taking a new direction and realigning, and thank you for that opportunity. So.
Yeah, can you get back to the other one? Yes, is this one working?
You got to hang out for a sec.
All right.
Henry, use this for now.
So, okay. Okay, I think Allison made the point of a relay race, and the analogy is really apt, is that we have to be able to pick up where the momentum has been created by the national program and actually the Raspberry Commission before that, and now be able to try to keep that momentum going. So what we're hoping to do today, once the slide comes up, where's it at?
Oh, you want
Yeah, I want the PowerPoint back up. Right there, thank you. Yep. Yeah, eventually. Eventually.
Okay.
All right. So our goal, first of all, this is the team. This is an industry response. The board will be doing some of this, obviously, and leading some of the effort. But frankly, this is all about your industry. It's about the raspberry industry and how we are going to react to the challenges ahead. And we have to be able to listen to hear you, be able to implement those programs, and then be able to move forward with that. And this is the team that you've elected to be leading your industry at this point. Glenn Sakuma has been 6 years on the board. Where are you, Glenn? Oh, where are you back over? There you are, back over there. Thank you so much. Sakuma's obviously been a huge part of the raspberry industry for a long time. And even though you're taking a little hiatus at this point in raspberry growing, still very involved in the whole berry industry and very key for us. Glenn will be done as of December 1 in a couple more days, and his term is over. And John Clark, we're stealing him from the national board, sticking him on ours. So he's not no time to retire, John. He's back on for the raspberry board of this state. Randy Honkoop is the vice president and the chair of the research commission. The research committee of our board, and you'll know Randy's been very engaged with research for some time. Jesse Guman, where you at, Jesse? There you are. Jesse's over there right next to Glenn. Jesse's been on the board now for a couple years, been heading the promotions committee for the board. John Cotton, he may be down there in Vancouver, but with the remote. So John, if you're hearing, thank you for your participation. Brad Rader joined about a year or so ago, heads the strategic planning committee of our board. John Mayberry's been our president for 5 years now. He's got another year to go, and then he's ready to term out. The very key leader in our board. And Joel, Ken Gazer has been the WSDA representative. He is also retiring soon. And Elisa Don, Elisa, are you here by any chance? There she is. We haven't even met yet, but Elisa will be our new board member from Olympia. And then we have two advisory board members, Brett Pell. Brett, you around? There you are in the way back corner with CHS. He's our crop consultant, and he's been an advisory on our board. And Joan Yoder is our food safety and treasure person with the Northwest Berry Co-op. Not here. She's doing duty in Cabo right now, so I'm going to have to fill in for her a little later. But Joan, thank you so much. That's our group. And so now what are we going to do? I guess that's the big question. So what we hope to do today now is a little different format than we have in the past years because we have a lot of significant issues on the table. So I've asked 3 of our key board members, that's Brandy, John, and Brad, in each of their positions to kind of be part of a panel. And this is pretty informal. I'm going to ask them to come up here and kind of reflect for 3-5 minutes just about where they see some of the challenges. And then what are we going to do about it? And then we'll all try to facilitate that discussion. And that is a discussion. It's not them telling us what. It's you guys asking questions, you guys giving some feedback on what you see happening. And we're going to spend the next half hour in just be able to try to talk through where we're at, where we hope to go, how do we pick up this baton that the National has laid out for us, and especially in the marketing area. But we also want to talk about research, what we're doing in the research program, which has been pretty much under the auspices of the Washington Commission. And we've got some new exciting ideas going on there as well. And then we are going to talk a bit about trade, some of the trade issues and so forth that are going on and our opportunities on that. And if there's other things that you want to bring to the attention of the board, we'll do that. And I'll finalize it with kind of looking through the budget for next year. And then we'll end this with a presentation of our new the industry award, service award person for 2018. So John, as president, where are you at? Now, why don't you come up here first and start it off, followed by Randy and then Brad, okay? And you can use that mic if you like, or whatever you prefer. Whatever one you want.
I thought I was done.
You're not done.
Okay. So I guess moving forward. Fine. Moving forward, last couple of years, we've just seen, and I guess everyone's been paying attention to this, but we've seen a lot of increased imports from both Eastern Europe as well as Mexico. That's continuing to increase at prices that we can't compete with, not on the unlevel playing field that we have right now. So our thoughts were to use some of the money that had been going to the national board, bring that back to the Washington board, and try and distinguish ourselves in whatever ways we can, whether that be through just strictly promoting our industry and the practices and the standards that we have to abide by, and the fact that our foreign competitors don't, as well as go after some of the illegal trade practices that we know are going on, specifically dumping out of Mexico, as well as the government investment and subsidies that are going on in Eastern Europe. So all that costs money, and we hope to use some of the funds that had been going to the national board to start fighting for our own industry. So that's about all I got.
Yeah, hang around up here. So.
Yeah, good morning. I can see that the raspberry industry is in some pretty tough times, just by the size of the crowd this morning for our meeting. We've always said at the Raspberry Commission board, we get very little participation when things are going well, and we have a whole lot of interest when chips are down, and it continues to bear true. And that's where we find ourselves, at least on the market side. I have to say I'm very disappointed personally that the National Council has been put to bed. My personal thinking is this is a very short-sighted move on the part of our industry, whoever voted that way. But it is what it is, and we're at where we're at, and we have to move forward. It's going to be doubly tough, I think, to take on our movement of product without the continuation of the momentum that has been generated with the national. But we'll do what we can, and we'll need your participation, your wisdom as we go forward. It's the way I see it. If the state commission takes up the efforts of promotion in a very significant way. You've noticed through communication that we've doubled your assessment rate beginning for this past year's crop. The board has seen fit to try to position itself to, in fact, pick up where the national is now leaving off as best we can. Another challenge that we have as an industry is on the field research side of things, which is the area that I've been involved with for 25 years. The things are changing with Washington State University and most university systems in that industries, if they are going to want to have a lot of service from those universities, they are going to have to step up in a much more significant fashion than we ever have before. For many years here, we've been getting some very inexpensive research done compared to trying to do it privately or farm by farm. But we've identified a very key position in the research for our industry, especially in the plant breeding area, which gives us hopefully the cultivars we need to remain competitive going forward. Our plant breeder, Dr. Pat Moore, is retiring in the next few years. So what happens with that, all the work that's gone into that for these many years with our many grower dollars helping to support that effort. And it appears that the only way that we can have confidence that program will in fact continue is if the industry steps up and endows a position at WSU. And the lower level of endowment is $1.5 million to create an endowment fund that supports that position. We've chosen to do that as a commission. We've already started on that, or started paying for that. The university is allowing us 7 years to get that going. So to actually fund that endowment. So that's some of the things, field research is still a big thing for me. I think, maybe we're at the bottom market-wise. None of us knows that, but that should give us some cause for optimism, because if history tells us anything, it swings back up. It's just a matter of when and how much. So we're going to have to dig in, cinch our belts up. We all know that. We're already doing it. And for those that can survive, there will be tomorrow.
Good morning. Brad Rader is my name, and I appreciate you listening to us for a minute. I think that John and Randy did an excellent job of talking about where we're heading. And to be honest with you, I understand there's some people that are not excited about what just happened, but it happened. And so we need to move forward, and the leadership of this board needs to be stronger than ever. And we are going to, President John is going to hold us to a higher level so that we can push forward and make sure that we're doing the right things for the industry. As you know, John laid out the pounds earlier of what we produce on an annual basis. Well, the byproducts of and things that can't be used in other industries are somewhat similar to those pound levels. So we have some unique challenges ahead of us, and some big challenges. And I think it's, I'm really excited about sitting in the room just with us. And, I'm one of just a few board members, but I'm really excited about having it just be us in a room with our promotion team, our research team, and what Randy talked about with with our endowed chair at Washington State University. I think that we talked a little bit about that last year. And, the apple industry for the state of Washington, I believe they have, I'm going to say this wrong, but I think it's 5 or 6 or 7 endowed chairs, 6. So at $1 million a piece. And I'm not saying we're going to, breed the Honeycrisp raspberry, but unfortunately, if we don't step up and pay to preserve our plant breeding position, which we have done, and thanks to the board and the industry for supporting that, we would lose that position. And the other keynote is that right now that breeding is done in Puyallup, and that's where we used to farm before we moved here. For some of you, most of you probably don't know that or don't care, but that's where we used to farm. Still a little bit of raspberry there, but most of it's here, as we know. So we need that plant breeder. It probably main office will be in Skagit, but they'll also have an office here with the new construction that you're seeing here at the fairgrounds. So we're excited about that. We're going to be looking for field plots for that new breeder. That search process is exciting. The president of the Washington State University has signed off on that. So that's exciting. I think I guess I'm a fighter. I think everybody on the board is. We just made a trip to DC here 3 weeks ago. I guess, I went in there not knowing what to expect, and came out, to be honest with you, more energized than what I went in, because we did get some audiences. We have an email chain going back and forth at the U.S. Trade Office. They're looking at different actions we can take to help us. We can't afford the dumping duties or dumping actions that we pursued. My dad was involved in the 80s against our friends to the north, and then also around 2000 with Chile. We can't quite afford that anymore. So we got to figure out other ways to do it. But we are, like I said, I'm excited. We got some challenges, but if I feel the trip to DC, we're probably going to have to make some more trips. And by the way, each board member or each person that went on that trip paid for a pretty good chunk of that out of our own pocket too. So it wasn't just out of commission dollars. I just want you to know that. Henry's given me the white flag here, so I'm going to stop. But any questions? And then I won't have to get back up here. Oh, all right.
All three of you kind of be around the mic, okay? So now it's time for you guys to engage. So what questions you follow up to what they said, questions to them on the bigger picture. Let's have some engagement, but so the industry is having this discussion, not just our board. Anybody? Some follow-up questions.
Come on, guys, wake up.
Yep.
Something.
You got or some suggestions of what we haven't talked about and what we need to start talking about. Who's going to lead us off? You got to have something to say. You usually do. So.
Oh, we're looking for Daryl.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody's looking for Daryl. So that's true. Why don't you talk a little bit about the school food service stuff? That's one of the issues that we've been working on.
Yeah, we were real lucky, I guess. We've been, over the years, we've done it a couple times, but this past year, the Berry Co-op was able to secure 14 loads, and Raiders Farms got 1 load of a government buy. And it actually didn't go to the school lunch program. It actually went to homeless shelters and jails and things like that. But we put seedless raspberry puree in a 1-pound cup, and it's a tedious process. We did somewhere around 700,000 pounds, and so that's 700,000 cups, and it takes a little while to do that, and it takes a different mentality when you're used to filling 400-pound drums. So it was a little bit different for us. But it's been interesting. On the cup, I put my email and I put my phone number. And some of the calls that I've gotten have been pretty exciting. People, I didn't know when they got a 1-pound cup of seedless raspberry in New York City or in Mississippi, if they'd even know what a raspberry was. So, but I've gotten calls and emails, people asking, where do I find recipes? How do I order again? I guess that was that was the most exciting one to me. There was the one last night was a lady said, yeah, I took a straw and poked a hole in we put a film over the top of this thing. But this lady said she poked a hole in it and put a straw in it, and she'd suck the raspberry and she'd eat dark chocolate. And she thought it was a real energy buzz.
Hey, that's the kind of promotion we need. Good.
Can I add on to that a little bit? Because we did have some meetings back in DC about that. And with the group of us were together with the folks that buy for the school lunch and other possibilities in a number of different offices. And so we've got a lot of work to do on that. When you look at the number right now that we're selling to the government, we have a lot of work to do. It's a huge opportunity. It's going to take some time and energy. And we're going to look to the experts to help us with that. But I say we could add, millions of pounds to that opportunity.
And again, we've learned a lot of these lessons from others, apples and others that have pursued. They sell a fair amount of fruit to the government programs. And so, we need to be in that game. We really haven't been as effectively as we should have been.
Well, and the secret to that, just one more thing, is that if we can get it into kids' hands at the schools, it'll help drive demand at the grocery store when they're there with their parents or otherwise. They're going to talk about raspberries more than they are now, and that's the real secret. It's going to take a lot of work, but
with that effort, typically we only start thinking about that opportunity when times are tough and we got low pricing and a lot of extra inventory. The challenge will be, I think, if we're going to move forward with those types of efforts, is that our industry is going to have to come together in some fashion, possibly outside of the Raspberry Commission, and create some entity to channel X amount of millions of pounds of our product each year into one of these programs, even if the price isn't as competitive as what the current market is. We've just come off of about 6 or 8 years of really historically above average pricing years. And during those years, of course, we all want to sell for as much money as we can get. And the challenge will be for us, will we have the foresight to think a little longer term? Even when times are easy and it's easy to move fruit and the pricing is good, that's going to be our challenge as we go forward. We're not in it for 2 or 3 years. We're in it long term. And if we can develop more of a long-term approach with some of these things, we will be situated much, much better as an industry. And that would help take, I think, a lot of the volatility, at least some of the volatility, out of our market situation. So things to think about going forward.
Another key reason there is that the government programs really have a strong preference, if not a requirement, to buy domestic. And when we look at now the raspberry industry, about half of the raspberry consumption in the U.S. is domestic, about half of it is imported fruit. So we're obviously fighting for the domestic producers, the people in the U.S. So that market should be ours, and then we have to develop it. So.
Just to follow up on what I just previously said, you got to understand, if we enter into some of these buys for like a school lunch program, those are longer term commitments. It isn't a year by year, oh, we have extra fruit, we need to get rid of it. That's not how those work. It's not a bonus buy like we just had. So understand that that's how it works.
Yep.
So you guys have been you guys have been obviously talking about this whole situation for a long time. What is your opinion of what's happening in the overall market over the next, say, 5 years? Is this thing continuing on the trend of more imports, or do you see some shifts in the road?
A lot of that's going to depend on if we can slow that down, because Mexico continues to plant more acres. They've doubled in production and fresh production every 2 years over the past about 8, and they continue. They're planning on doing that again. Right now they're at about 250 million pounds, with a 10 to 15% of that byproduct ending up in the frozen market. If that doubles again, that goes from 25 million to 50 million pounds. That would devastate our industry. So a big part of our goals over the next year or two is to slow some of that down. And the same thing's going on in Eastern Europe. We've got government investment going on in Ukraine, in Bulgaria, in just about every Eastern Bloc country over there. So it's getting our politicians and our people in the trade offices and commerce aware of that and doing everything we can to slow that down. But it's also going to be promoting our own products. I think we've got opportunities by making the case to both our retailers as well as the consumers that this trend towards eating more fruits and vegetables that are imported is not good. It's not good for the consumer. It's definitely not good for us, not good for our farm workers. So those are some of the opportunities that we're going to be taking a look at, as well as product development. We really don't, as a raspberry industry, have a product to stand behind. We don't have a Craisins or a Palm Wonderful. I think that that's going to be really key as well for both school lunch as well as regular retail. So between those 3 things, those are probably our biggest hurdles as well as opportunities.
On that local promotion note, Jesse here has been working, our committee chair has been working a lot on that with Washington Grown. And we do have we're not going to have time to play it, right? But we'll probably play it during the break. If we can do that, maybe Chris, after we break, that we'll have a little note. If you want to watch it here, there's a segment on Washington Grown that was almost exclusively raspberries this year. So we'll have, there's several things in there that probably are worthwhile doing. And we'll, during the break, we'll run it over here. Okay.
To Tom's question about looking forward on the market, of course, it's anybody's guess, and we all have speculations about what might happen. We certainly have some headwinds with the strong U.S. dollar. The last few years, it's been hugely overvalued next to foreign currencies. And that puts us at a great disadvantage, and it actually creates a real magnet for product to come into the U.S. And so that is a headwind. I don't know how that will change or when or if that will change. Personally, I believe that the market will do its work with the huge production going on in Mexico, and I heard Miles Ryder who is CEO of Driscoll's this past spring give a talk down in California, and he was making it very clear to the many berry growers that were in that audience that we are stuffing the fresh market in raspberries, and we need to dial it back to maintain the pricing that we need. So those companies, of course, aren't taking all that is being grown by their growers because the market can't use it for a number of weeks or a lot of weeks of the year. So for me, I know, just like for us right now, when things are not profitable, production goes down, acres go away, and especially in the California-Mexican system, that's a 18-month growing system where there's a choice at those intervals about what they plant and how much, as opposed to ours. We tend to have almost permanent plantings or acres devoted to production. It's harder for us to drop our acres, or it's more painful. But I look for that to change. I'm optimistic that things will, in the next 4 or 5 years, be significantly different. Hopefully on the positive side.
Time for one more question. If not, thank you guys. They'll be around. Me and the mics. Well, they'll be around for a while, so we'll catch them dating break for the next 2 days, right? So appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, Brad. Yep, I'm going to get through it. Okay, I'm going to take a second or two, look through our budget. This is, and then Brad will be back up here in a second, so don't go too far. This is what the board did this past in the end of October. And this was a budget that was done before we knew the results of the national vote, which really put us in a tough spot because the board needed to be able to know how to be able to pick up that baton, as Allison used that analogy, and yet still not know if the national was going to be busy, still going or not. So what we did, this first column is what we budgeted in 18. Then the second column is roughly what we ended up spending in 18, and we will finish that year off with a fiscal year is our calendar year, so we're not, these aren't final numbers yet, but this is the way it looks. And then 19, what's interesting is the last column is what are we going to do about the future? And this was a big guess because of those questions that we had surrounding the national console. What the board did is double the assessment. So we went from a half cent to 1 cent this year, and giving us about $740,000 in assessments to work with. The board also took $200,000 out of the reserve that we had, about $360 in the past years. See on those last two lines, and put that into our budget for next year as well. Now this is a draft budget. The board will finalize this budget in the January meeting, and we are here to present this to you and to get your feedback, probably not directly now, but to the board members during the next few days about what you think those numbers ought to be. And this is the way it was laid out, and I know they'll have to be adjusted now with the fact that we know the National Council will not be in place next year. That council will take a year as to shut down. We had a meeting yesterday, the council did, and the rules, it's going to take a while to shut it down. There are 3 trustees that have been appointed. That has to be confirmed yet, and actually that is John Clark, Adam Enfield, and Rob Dollywall will be the 3 that have to make the decisions about how the council gets shut down, and then how the state commission, we pick this up. These are the numbers. We were going to put some money into marketing. We're going to put some money into health research to kind of fill those gaps. Also into another $100,000 into fair trade issues. We're not sure what those are, but there are opportunities for us in the federal rules and the trade commissions and commerce commissions, and that Brad and his team and the rest of the team that went to DC had many of those fruitful discussions with some of those people about where we might pursue, what buttons to push at this time that will give us some immediate and long-term relief on some of the imports that come in here so cheap at this point. So these are the numbers. We'll look at them some more. They're in your newsletter that we sent to you a while back, so I'm not going to keep them here in front of you too long. But this is where we're at. These are the things we're trying to balance out. Product development, as John just mentioned, this is something that nobody has put much money into in the raspberry world. It's probably been our weakest link. We are looking for ways in which we can help juice some of the product development that lead us towards some more signature products in raspberries, which would really help move some of the fruit that we have. That is enough, I think, at this point, but I'm going to bring Brad up here. Last year, our board decided that we wanted to initiate something that to honor and a particular grower or somebody, an industry contributor who has really contributed a lot to the development of this industry. And as we're talking about today here, we're talking about some short-term things we need to do. We're also talking about some long-term things that we are going to be doing too, like the endowed position and plant breeding, long-term. We have some people that have put long-term commitments to developing this industry, and what we have today up here, the wonder of this industry, is a lot of result of what some people have done for many, many years over many generations. Last year, we initiated this response by honoring Lyle Rader. Lyle was the first recipient of this Industry Service Award. And the way we do this is to say whoever received it is now in charge of appointing the next second award. So next year, the person who gets this award this year and the Rader family will determine who gets the third one. That's the way the process works. So I'm honored to bring Brad up here as a representative of the Rader family to make an award for the 2018 Industry Service Award. There you are. Yep. Thanks.
So for those of you that know me, I rarely bring notes up when I talk. So this is a big deal. I have notes, and it's an honor. It's a real honor to be up here. You know, last year I was up here receiving an award on behalf of my dad. It was an emotional time, and for those of you that want to figure out how to make me cry, get me up on a stage and give me an award for my dad. So you guys got to see that last year, and now I get to do that to somebody else in our industry. So I'm honored to be up here today, and you know, our family talked about this, and it was a pretty easy decision. So the 2018 recipient of this Industry Service Award is Kurt Mayberry, and as Henry alluded to, we're talking about some short-term things. You know, there's long-term things we're looking at, you know, but this is a lifetime. This is a lifetime that we're talking about here. So, you know, this award is meant to capture a life's work towards an industry like the raspberry industry and honor them. So my job is hard because I have to get up here and talk for a minute or two and try to capture that. And I think there's going to be a PowerPoint slideshow that's going to talk about a little bit about Mr. Mayberry. I have one story, and then I'm going to talk about the history. Before we moved to Linden, my dad made multiple trips up here to kind of check the area out. And he knew the Mayberry family from different meetings like this and other meetings. So we stopped by Kurt's office area there. It was probably 1985, about that, 1984, I think. So I'm 14, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. I can't do math, so we'll just leave it at that. But I remember, you know, this happy, hardworking guy there, and I'm not that old. So one of the things I also saw was this Honda Big Red three-wheeler that was sitting there parked by the office. And maybe you still have it, Matt. But anyway, I guess I was looking at that maybe a little too long and staring at it. And Kurt said, "Hey, why don't you go for a ride?" And we didn't have anything like that on my farm, so I'm sure it made my dad a little upset. But Kurt let me jump on that thing, and I took off through the field. I had no idea where I was going, but I was tooling around in strawberry and raspberry fields, having a good time. And I think that's one memory that I have. I have a lot of memories of Mr. Mayberry, but that's one that I have, and I think that sums up just how awesome of a guy he was. So a little history here. Matt, Kurt would have been the third generation of the family. 1944, Leonard Mayberry and his wife Blanche moved from a small town in Missouri to join their son Winfred, Kurt's dad, and his wife Kathleen on a small farm just south of the Canadian border near the town of Linden, Washington. In 1946, their son which was the year of Kurt's birth, they celebrated their first harvest of 21 acres of strawberries. Leonard retired in 1959, but Winfred continued to expand the farm with the addition of raspberries, which I found that was 1965 was the first year of raspberries. So who had raspberries planted in 1965? Can I have a show of hands for that? Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. So we're going way back here. This is a lot of history. So in 1973, Kurt and Annette purchased the farm. Over the years, Kurt expanded to nearly 1,000 acres of strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries. Kurt passed away in April 23rd of 2007. The farm is now owned and operated by the fourth generation of Mayberries. Kurt's children, Mandy, Angie, and Matt, who proudly carry on the heritage. So a couple other things. I mentioned that raspberries were added in 1965. Raspberry harvesters on Kurt's farm added 1 year after he bought the farm, 1974. I think, when I think about the family, I think about legacy. You talk about those 4 generations. I looked up the definition of legacy. I didn't quite like the way it was described, so I changed it a little bit. It's, something which we talk about, this legacy, which is this farm, this industry, this business, handed down from one generation to the next. And that's simple, but that's a lot, but it just sums it up for me. This is an awesome legacy that Kurt has given to the family. And Kurt has also shown us as an industry how to do things too. He set the bar extremely high. Just how Kurt showed Winfred, then Kurt, and then Matt now taking care of the fields, and just how, from an industry's perspective, quality is everything in that family, and I greatly respect that. So I'd like to invite, maybe should we do the PowerPoint first? How do you want to do this, Chris? Awesome. Are you thinking that's now? Okay.
Hi, everyone. Going to Strawberry Fields. Nothing is real. Nothing to get hung about. Strawberry Fields. Nothing is real.
I'm going to let Matt introduce everybody.
Thank you guys, and we much appreciate this award and the honor of our dad. And my mom, Annette, my sister Mandy, and my other sister Angie, and three of the grandkids, three of the seven grandkids. There's a couple more over there, but they won't come up here. My wife is over there, and many of our employees. It's like Brad said, he cried last year, but I said I wasn't going to this year, but it's still hard. It's been 12 years, and it never changes. So thank you guys.
So on behalf of the Washington Red Raspberry Commission, I want to present you and the family with the 2018 Red Raspberry Industry Outstanding Service Award. Goes to Kurt Mayberry. So here I'm going to pass it along.
Is the rest of that going to just downloading, or what's the story? Okay. We're going to work on it, and maybe during the break, we're going to be having all kinds of things you could be watching. So we're going to break here pretty quick, but this we're going to try to work on this, and also there is that Washington Grown segment. So we'll be playing some of that. If you want to get some coffee, come back in, catch some of these kind of things. Again, our challenges as a Raspberry Commission are not small. Challenges as a Raspberry industry are not small, but it's worth investing in. It's worth putting money in. It's worth putting effort in. We've got a great board, a good team, and certainly we're going to commend the people that Tom and Allison and that team and John, what they brought to the table is really raised the bar for us. And now for us to try to keep that bar up and keep it moving will be a challenge. And I don't think we've seen the last of you guys being involved as well, because we're going to need more team members, and we like quality team members, so we appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Make sure you're here for the next couple days. We got a lot of different programs. Beth, you got something that you want to add, please?
Thanks, you all. So my name's Beth, and I am just here to, again, promote the wonderful breakfast that's been provided. So keep eating. There's lots of great food. And this event is zero waste. So we're really trying to make an effort to keep this kind of stuff out of the compost bin. So if you had a burrito this morning and you got one of these, don't throw it in with the compost products. Put it in the landfill garbage can, all right? And enjoy the conference, and all the coffee cups are also compostable. So thank you.
We have a lot of us, so this will be good. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate you being here, and stay with us. Yeah. Just nothing there. Just quit on us, huh? Okay, then move it to the Washington Grown, if you would. So, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Haven't seen you for a while. Oh, good. Well, that's a big statement. I'm still working on that. We're over by Vandergeese and Nursery now, over that end of town. So yeah, pretty close over there. So. Okay. Good. But I'll be interested in see how it plays out. So good. Thanks. Dan Fazio. Dan, how are you? Good. Oh, you I heard there are protesters out there. Oh, really? That's I had.
Hi everyone, I'm Christy Goranson, and welcome to Washington Grown. We all know that pie is an American classic, and this one here is made with local raspberries, and it's full of tasty Washington pride. In this episode, we are talking all about the sweet and juicy Washington Grown raspberries.
I'll be getting a tasty tour at the Food Lovers Paradise Country Mercantile.
I don't think I've ever eaten my way through an entire tour like that before.
Then I'll make a piled high raspberry pie at the Linden Dutch Bakery.
It's one of the hardest things I've ever done on this show.
And Tomas will be handing